Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect, one word conversations. This is um, an exciting week. This is going to be a very interesting week. I don't know why I'm doing that. I kind of hit a button here. I just realized that I did that. Okay. Let's just go again. I really hope that you're able to stay with me for most of the episodes this week because this is a very exciting week. There's a lot of things happening. One being that I cannot believe we'll be celebrating our 50th show, our 50th live show. I mean, I've had over 50, just over 50 recorded shows, including the bonus shows, but officially the 50th episode will be this Thursday. And also this Thursday, we have an important one word conversation episode on, and with the word being race. So there's a number of reasons why it's a special and a set aside episode, but I'm very excited about having that and seeing what comes out of that. Um, it's with that in mind, it brings us to our word today. Today's word is anxiety, and I can totally get that this is showing up for a number of people in a number of different ways. There's uh, a number of ways or situations that will cause anxiety or cause us to look at this word. And so, as I do, I bring in one of my friends and we have a conversation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great. This is the part of the show where I invite my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable.
Okay. My name is Phillip Reynolds, and I've been working in behavioral and mental health for, I don't know, I think going on in about 14 years now.
Mm,
And so I started working with adolescents at a residential treatment facility, launched into my own private practice, which morphed into a company providing intensive in-home supports to families. And now I'm kind
mhm.
of transitioned into doing some executive coaching, and I'm in process to potentially help launch an outpatient mental health center in the McLean, Virginia area as well. So mental health is what I've done for a number of years professionally, and I guess most importantly, I am been married for 14, going on 15 years, and have
Wow.
three beautiful kids. Uh,
Right.
and that's kind of my motivation to go to work and be productive and provide and take care of my family.
Oh, wonderful. So I just, I we first met when you were in undergrad, and
Mhm.
it's just fascinating for me to hear how many years you've been married and how many kids you have. It's like somebody's getting old, and it's not me, right? so how does anxiety land for you?
Um, it lands very in a very relevant way uh, these days. I mean, if you had caught me back in December or earlier than that, I think it would land much differently. But in the era of the coronavirus and some of the events that have happened over the past week or so regarding some of the deaths of African Americans at the hand of law enforcement, I think anxiety sits differently.
Right.
Thinking through first and foremost what we've all been enduring for the past 3 months with coronavirus and having to be in the house and the safety measures and things of that nature, and not knowing when that's going to end and what's going to happen, running a business and how's that going to impact finances in that way, taking care of a family, dealing with a number of people that have anxiety that are now in unique situations at home, right? They could be distracted from home life by having two people outside of the home working. Now everybody's at
Right.
home and the kids are at home
Right.
and we don't really like each
Right.
other that much is what we're figuring out.
Right. Right.
What do we do with this? When do we get free? We had the gym taken away, so now our stress release is gone. And it's like, what's going on? So I think that the anxiety is at the forefront of what a lot of people are feeling these days.
Yeah, I totally get that. And the balance that I have with I guess anxiety, that how it shows up in my life, is that I don't want to say I beat myself up about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's like I act as if I shouldn't have it. It
Mm-hmm.
is like a bad thing. And it is, the more that I think I'm learning, the more that I learn how to not just manage it, but just be aware of areas that I have anxiety, and create solutions or create things that I can move past that, then it's okay. Then I see my anxiety as a gift, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like an alert, saying, "Hey, this is something that you need to take a look at."
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I don't want to say the best way, or is there other ways for us to look at our anxiety?
I think accepting anxiety as an early warning system, right?
Right.
Anxiety comes
Hmm.
because of events in the future of in some sense, or potentially in the future, and that future could be an indeterminate amount of time. It could be anxiety about going outside and having a conflict, or anxiety about what happens when we die, right?
Right.
And so I think the reality is, while that warning system is there, what we do with that is important. And I think what you said is one of the most important things that we can do. What can you most immediately control?
Right.
Because that's where we as human beings, as individuals, we love control. And we love the
Right.
idea that we have far more control than we actually do. And so
Right.
we can go by relatively anxiety free if there's money in the account and we can get to
Right.
work and job is good and everybody's happy. But when a
Right.
natural disaster hits, or when a pandemic hits, or when we
Right.
see on TV someone that looks like us
Right.
be murdered under 9 minutes of a knee on the neck, that lets us
Right.
know how we're not in control. We
Right.
can't determine circumstances. And the reality is that lack of control that we have exists at all times. We just delude ourselves into thinking we have far more control than we really do. And that's just not the case. And so anxiety really is, as long as things are going the way that I think they are, and that
Right.
I feel like I can manage and regulate and structure that, then I'm okay and I'm calm
Right.
and things are good.
Right. No, I totally get it. It is like, in my coaching, I have a saying that says, it's not a problem until it's a problem.
Right.
You know, you know, and it's like, that's how a lot of people show up. And I do that myself. And like you were pointing to, it's like, get money in the bank. My wife loves me. Kids are healthy, all that other kind of stuff. I'm cool, right? And then there's not as much money, and you're fighting with your wife, and then you watch the news, and it's like, whoa, wait a second,
Right.
you know, is there a balance, between staying present,
Mm-hmm.
right, to what's so, and being aware of what's coming, or or what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that makes
Okay.
sense. I think
Okay.
the reality is being present, right?
Right.
So understanding how you're feeling and processing things and trying to be aware of what you're feeling inside of yourself so that
Right.
you understand first and foremost where your baseline is. An example of
Right.
that. Ahmaud Bradbury was apparently out for a run, and whether you believe that narrative or you don't believe that narrative, an African American man was out for a run and was confronted because he fit the description.
Right.
African American man. I don't like running, but
Right.
not being able to get to the gym, I'm out for a run with my wife last week. And obviously she's faster than me. I'm not that fast.
Right.
And I tell her, go ahead and leave, make your time, make your best time. And so I'm probably about 5 to 7 minutes behind her. And I start thinking in my head, man, I'm running. And somebody could think that I fit some description.
Right.
Somebody could pull up on me. And I get home and I'm having the conversation with my wife, and she's like, yeah, I got nervous when I couldn't see you anymore because I started thinking the same thing. And I'm at
Right.
home and I've run into the kids and we're outside waiting for you because they were playing outside. And I'm thinking, well, what happens? And so in my mind, what I realized was the events of the young man being gunned down
Right.
and what was present and happening when I left for my run. That reality hadn't fully set in. I wasn't present with the impact that I had from seeing that, the trauma of seeing that. And so that
Right.
anxiety kicked in on the run because that's
Right.
when I realized how all of that stuff went together. And so I think it's
Right.
first being present, recognizing that the images from our TVs, the news reporting. I had a client that was watching all the news channels and staying abreast of it, and she couldn't function because she was
Right.
so overwhelmed with everything that was being reported and all that was going on, and it was just inundated with it, that it wasn't until I said, hey, take a break from
Right.
watching that and just sit and feel what you're feeling, understand what you're feeling, and get present with where you are. And
Right.
I think that's a first step. Then when the
Right.
anxiety hits, what can you control at that point? What can
Right.
you regulate? And I think that's where you start to think through things and not just let your mind spiral out of control into the possibilities and the what ifs.
Right. No, I think that's great. I really, um, I've been called clueless or, heads in the clouds and all that other kind of stuff, because I kind of operate as if, everything's fine,
Mm,
right? And then until I'm confronted with a reality of, holy crap, like you were saying, I'm running,
mhm,
and it's like, I'm, in my mind, all I'm doing is exercising, but in a number of other people's mind, there is something else that I could be doing. And and so for me, I am trying to really, I guess, I don't want to say be innocent or try to stay in this pure sense of, this is all I'm doing. All I'm doing is getting exercise. It's to
mm,
stay in this example.
mm,
All I'm doing is getting exercise, and that's just it. That's, if I worry about anything else,
mm,
I'm not enjoying, or I am not getting the benefits, everything totally, of just exercising, or just kind of just being here. um, but in some cases, I believe that is a dangerous proposition for me to to just think that I can only do one thing
mm,
and not realize, the reality of how other people could
mm,
see me, or anything that's going on. And so I don't want to be anxious about it. I don't want to move to not running.
mm,
I don't want to move to, it's like me with, like you were talking about corona, with wearing a mask. I
mm,
mean, we have been conditioned, I believe, since I was growing up, a mask on your face is bad.
mm,
You're up the, you're either, deathly ill, or
mm.
you're gonna rob me, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like, and so now we have to break that and go, okay, this is, no, all they're doing is protecting themselves and protecting me from a virus, and until somebody robs you with a mask, right? And then everybody's, a suspect again. So,
I think that
go
I
ahead.
I think that's an important component, and because when talking about anxiety, we also have to talk about trauma. An
Right.
event doesn't create anxiety unless it has some type of marker that suggests something bad could happen. Now, if
Mm.
something bad has already happened, my anxiety is going to be significantly higher.
Right.
So, for instance, I work with adolescents who were sexually abused.
Mm.
Being around a stranger for a lot of us doesn't create super significant, depends on the stranger, depends on what they look like. For
Right.
some of those young men I work with, being around a stranger created a debilitating anxiety. And
Mm.
so we experience far more trauma than we would register as trauma in our minds. We,
Right.
we,
Mm.
we experience things that show up and register in our bodies
Right.
as trauma. We can have residual impacts physically. We can have residual impacts into how we think about and process things. That if we were
Right.
having a conversation with a buddy, we would say, "Oh no, I haven't had any trauma. I haven't experienced trauma." But those traumas can lead to greater anxieties because of the impact. So once you've been marked by something that says, "Okay, this went poorly," that next
Right.
time is that much harder, right?
Right.
That
Right.
time I go out running and kind of get stopped by the police officers, the next time I go out to run, that anxiety is going to be that much harder. Now, think
Right.
about that in a broader sense, right? So we have the anxiety first and foremost from the coronavirus. What that looks like, the number of people not knowing how you catch it, how it's passed, and the CDC updating and changing things, and it being a constantly changing environment. We have no idea what's going on. All we know is we've been sitting in the house mostly for about 3 months, being
Right.
relatively anxious about what it would mean to leave the house financially and everything else. So you have the anxiety of that, right? Somewhat
Right.
a mild trauma. Now
Right.
you take on top of that, and you add for a lot of African Americans the experience of in a very close proximity 3 recent cases of police over aggression, overstepping kind of boundaries, abuse, and just lack of care for life.
Right.
What do you see happening in the protests now? So
Right.
you have people
Mm.
on punishment for 3 weeks sitting with anxiety, 3 months
Right.
sitting with anxiety, so to speak. Then you have
Right.
these events, and now people are out. And so what you're seeing is not just the effects of the past 3 months of people being confined and quarantined to the house, but you also have years of lived experience by African Americans seeing this again, yet again happening. And so you have people that are protesting for all types of reasons, consciously and subconsciously, but it's over the top. It's spilling over. There's unrest in a sense because people are anxious. And what do they do
Right.
with that? And how do they express that? It's a language in and of itself. And it's all, I'm not in control, but I can
Right.
do this. And I think this is
Right.
going to make me feel better. And some of it, a lot of it is short sighted because we're not
Right.
taking the time, like you said, to stop and think, okay, what's the best path forward? How do I manage these feelings that I'm feeling? How can I be
Right.
present with all the emotions that are inside of me so that I can do something that's going to be productive and not something
Right.
that will ultimately be counterproductive?
Right. No, I totally get it. It reminds me of, what a therapist once said to me is that we either talk things out or we act things out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and and I am sometimes my anxiety, and when I think of anxiety, it doesn't come with words,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you want to be able to talk things out with a loved one, or or a therapist or something, and you just like it's like I don't know, this just I just don't feel comfortable. I just don't feel, I can't put a marker on this.
Mm-hmm.
But so is it at some point, does it just something gets in your head and you just kind of you just gotta deal with it, or
I think
not, or
it's kind of a level of self awareness, and
yeah,
I
okay.
think talking to the right person, and that's not everybody.
Right,
A lot
right,
of
oh
people
yeah.
are talking now, and a lot of people are wanting to talk now, but talking to the people that are really going to draw you out. A term that I use on a regular basis, especially with couples, is emotional cultivation. Somebody that's
Mm,
going to get into your feelings with you and really try to do more digging and exploration to draw out what you're feeling instead
mm,
of having a conversation. I'm just looking to advance my point and, hear what you have to say, critique that, and everything else. It's really, no, I'm listening to you. You're saying this. It sounds like this. Just trying to put more words to it. I tell people, clients all the time in my office, my superpower as a therapist is listening. You come in
Right.
here with all the information. As you say
Right.
things, I'm repeating back in different language, in different ways, things that you are saying to me. And if it
Right.
sounds crazy,
Right.
that's because it probably is, but it's like
Right.
it's in your head that way. All I'm
Right.
doing is just saying it in different words. He's been unfaithful to you in throughout the course of the marriage numerous times, and he's now left you, and you're fighting to get your husband back from his 22-year-old girlfriend with physical intimacy.
Hmm.
That that's your. This is what you're fighting for.
Right.
As simply as that. And now it's, oh, wait, I hear myself out loud. Somebody's
Right.
repeating things to me that
Right.
I've said. It now
Right.
sounds different. And so I think when it comes to even matters of anxiety around coronavirus, even matters of anxiety about race, having somebody to talk to that's
Right.
willing to hear you, that's willing to hear those emotions, that's willing to take what you're saying, repeat it back to you, process
Right.
it through their filter and lens, and then have a genuine dialogue. The reality is that for the majority of us, the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, very few of us have people that genuinely sit down and take the time to listen to us, to
Hmm.
sit, hear what we have to say, without having an agenda of their own, to take it in, repeat it back to us. That doesn't happen often. That's what
Right.
therapists provide, is somebody that will listen to you, process that, and hopefully encourage you towards thinking about it in a healthy way or taking healthy action steps out of it. And so I think really being able to sit with how we're
Right.
feeling and having someone that can help us sit with that and talk through that, I think that's
Right.
a really helpful step in the process of managing our anxiety, instead of just stacking up the next day after the next day and having no idea how I'm feeling until, I'm 10 years into a job I hate, having a breakdown because I'm miserable.
Right. No. No, I totally get it. And I think it's that balance of not just talking, but finding the people that have the listening. My working definition of effective communication is, a bold sender,
Mhm,
and a prepared and willing receiver.
mhm,
And I think too often, when we have something to say or something that we want to communicate, the person isn't prepared
mhm,
or willing to hear what you have to say.
mhm,
And it's like, especially when you're speaking about your fears, your anxieties, your thing, if you're, Facebook, a Facebook post may not be the place to kind of, just kind of get that out,
right, right.
type of thing, because a like or a heart is not the answer. Is not the answer, or not will have you talk through it. And I think that when the, I guess where I am with my anxiety, or how it's showing up, and how I feel like I see it, is that, is is there a way to, I don't know, if effectively or appropriately, express your anxiety with, you know um, actions, with yelling, with with throwing something, with
Mhm,
with working out, or with, you know what I mean?
mhm.
Is that an effective way to do it, or is it mainly just talking?
I think it can be a cathartic experience to yell,
Right.
to work out, to hit something. I have a friend of mine that's a boxer that'll tell you he feels real good after he hits a heavy bag,
Right.
or a sparring partner. But I think those can be helpful. But I also know someone that works out multiple hours a day just to work out multiple hours the next day, and when they can't work out, they're overrun by what they're feeling. And so I think
Mm,
in some ways, as a way to alleviate the stress, to bring the pressure down. So I have a mother that I work with that recognizes that she yells at her kids often, and she's more likely to yell when she's stressed out, right?
Right.
So the reality is, some of my work with her is like, you have to do your own work to better understand how you're feeling, because letting
Right.
it out in that way isn't helpful for your kids. And the
Right.
reality is, here we go again, it's creating a set of traumas that are going to lead to them having anxiety into
Right.
their lives. And that's often what we do. We visit our anxiety onto other people. And so if I
Right.
know that William is going to yell when his order's not right, now, as
Right.
his wife, I'm out to dinner and I'm anxious about whether or not he's going to yell because the order's not right. So I'm going to be extra
Right.
cautious. I'm going to try and have him double check and everything else, and I'm bracing. Now, my desire to go out to dinner with William is going to be a bit reduced, because that yelling is really embarrassing for me and it's really
Right.
hard for me. And so
Right.
that's how some of us manage our anxiety, by just avoiding it, right?
Right.
Instead of
Yeah.
saying, William, stop being a jerk and yelling at people.
Right. Right. It's like, what's all that about, right?
That's the problem. And I think anxiety and honesty have to be paired together. Can we be honest
Right.
with ourselves about what we're feeling? Can we be honest
Right.
with those that are close to us in our lives about what we're feeling, instead of everything's okay, right? So if you
Right.
look down anyone's Facebook page or their Instagram feed, you see a lot of happy pictures, doing positive things, living my best life. Everything's great. Now, I can look down some of those feeds of some of those folks that I know personally. I'm like, that's not your life. That's not
Right.
what's really going on for you.
Right.
Everything's not great. You're stressed out. You're worried. You're doing things to make yourself feel better. That's not true. And so, social media is a great place to be dishonest, but we have to
Right.
find some place where we can be honest, so we can really
Right.
deal with our issues. So
Right.
we can say, hey, I'm insecure, which is why I post the pictures of myself that I do with my shirt off or in something scantily clad or whatever, because I need those likes. And now I have
Right.
this anxiety, if this picture that I think is me really looking, cute and fly, like if I
Right.
only have 2 or 3 likes, because now you're telling me that I might not be as cute. So now I'm anxious. Now I'm worried. And now I got to give you more. So it's this whole
Right.
this cycle, whereas we can just be honest. If you're going
Right.
to post a picture that says no filter, actually have no filter on it.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I think so. I think what I just got there from, there's a level of honesty that that you have to have to kind of deal with anxiety. I mean, it's I think there's own it. There's
Mhm,
like an ownership in it too. Is that there's sometimes for myself I've noticed that a close pal or relative of anxiety is fear, right?
mhm,
For me, and so I don't have to admit that I am fearful about something. I will relabel it,
mhm,
as of being cautious, of being considerate, all that other kind of stuff, and I'm not honest with what it really is. So I miss an opportunity to face my fears or deal with something or recognize what signal it's coming up, and I think the level of honesty that we can have, and with ourselves, and then with others, that if it's a professional or a close friend that has the listening
mhm,
that we need, then we can work through that.
mhm,
Um, um, so yeah, I just really think that um, for me, as an adult, or as in a society, as the old people in a society, we don't do a good job of dealing with um, grief or loss or our fear or anything like that. It is something that we it feels like we just kind of suppress it, or kind of have it um, in some like crazy ball that we can, that we can unpack, or and nobody else can unpack, and then it just explodes, one day on everyone. Why do you think that there is this level of not really knowing how to deal with or work through, anxiety or the tough stuff? I
because
guess I can say.
yeah, we don't practice it. I mean, growing
Mm,
up, it's often suppressed if something bad is going on, or there's the creepy uncle that tries to touch the nieces and nephews. Let's just not talk about that. Well, if I have an experience with that creepy uncle, and then we're just not going to talk about it, what does that leave me to sit with? Or any number of things,
right,
and especially in the African American community, there's this culture of let's not talk about it. But mental health issues exist in all
hmm,
communities. And so years
right,
of not talking about this stuff. If you look at marriages from years ago that never experienced separation or divorce or anything, it was the commitment to be in a marriage. While that's a good thing, what do you do with all the conflicts and things that come up when dad's a serial philanderer, or mom just seems to not be able to get out of bed? And so what do you do with that? And so I think now as we move forward and go forward, I think there is a more of a culture of, hey, let's kind of talk about this. Let's try and
right,
understand it. Let's get this on the table that's emerging. But I think even more than that, we have to encourage that. We have to be okay with
right,
therapy. Like it has to not be a
right,
bad word to say, oh, I'm going to a therapist. And as African American
right,
men, I can tell you those are the hardest clients to keep coming back to an office for therapy, because there's this idea that
right,
I have to be tough and strong and handle it and suck it up and just keep moving forward. No, brother, you need to talk.
right,
You need to talk about what's
right,
going on inside of you. And so I think it really is getting to a safe space to be able to have those conversations. So one of the biggest tricks that exists that everybody gets trapped by is anger. People will tell you all the time that
mm,
they're angry. I'm angry. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. And my response to that is, no,
right,
you're not. The reality is that anger is a secondary emotion. No one just arrives as
right,
anger at a pure emotion. Anger has to attach to another feeling that's beneath it, and seldom do we explore that. So, underneath of my anger is hurt that you were texting some other guy on your phone when we're supposed to be in a committed relationship. My anger is
right,
that I've been fired from this job without cause, and I'm worried about what I'm going to do to make ends meet. And I want to understand what happened and how we got to this point. My
right,
anger is on top of another emotion, and until I try to
mm,
understand that emotion, I'm not really dealing with the
mm,
situation, honestly. That's what it is. And so, yes,
right,
my anger might be because I'm afraid. I'm afraid to go outside and go for a run and have an encounter with a law enforcement person because of what might happen, because I can't control it. Because there's an
right,
institution that exists outside of myself where the majority of police officers aren't bad cops, but I can't risk running into that one bad cop, because that one exchange
so,
with that one bad police officer could mean my life. So I'm
right,
afraid, yes, but I'm anxious about my freedom to go and move about and do the things that I want to do. I'm anxious about what that might mean for my family. And can I get real and sit back and have those genuine conversations instead of just saying I'm angry?
right, right. Wow. Yeah, that really hit me. Because there was a lot of um, there's a lot of times in my life where I would repress my anger. I wouldn't say, when it would come up, but because I was so busy repressing my anger, I wasn't really looking at where that anger was coming from, what it was connected to.
Mhm,
And so in that, covering the anger up, and having nice guy Bill smiling and all that other kind of stuff, it was like collapsing within on itself,
mhm,
underneath.
mhm,
You mentioned before about trauma, and I want to come back to this while we're kind of moving along kind of quickly through some things. Is that there's you know recognizing traumas that we're aware of, and traumas that we're not aware of. How do you how do you think that plays in our anxiety and how we kind of function in our life?
Mm. Um, I think traumas that we're not aware of, sometimes we create an environment to just make okay the effects of that trauma or um, the behavioral playouts of that trauma, right? So,
Right.
you'll see celebrated. I don't know, you have the world star hip hop and some of those other things, the fights happening, right? Somebody getting beat up,
Right. Yeah.
somebody getting
I'm
jumped.
fascinated by that.
Right, right. And you
It's
got to
like, is
tune in.
somebody gonna break this up? Right? You know, it's like,
Right, 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 right. And so it's okay. Now we have this platform where we can watch this kind of thing play out, and we've become comfortable with
Mhm.
it. So now when we're in
Right.
a situation and an environment and things are escalating, we're looking for the camera, right? Somebody screaming out "World Star" in the
Mm.
background, and all of this just feels
Right.
like an okay thing to do. And so I had an incident where I was riding my bike and I fell off the bike in front of a bus stop. And the first thing that happened after I fell off my bike in front of in front of about 10 people was everybody pulled out a camera to record me because
Wow.
everybody wanted to post a picture of the idiot that just fell off the bike and hurt, right? And we're not
Wow.
thinking what that does to us, right? We're
Mm.
not thinking how that plays out. We're not thinking what happens if that does go viral of me having this brief moment in time, this brief episode. Well, now if something goes
Right.
viral, we can attempt to monetize it, right? And become the idiot that now getting paid for their 15 minutes of fame. But we don't think about
Right.
the lasting impact of all of that. So that's when we're not aware of it. When we're not aware of, as a parent yourself, I'm sure you realize that as you became a parent, as you became a partner with your spouse, when you heard yourself say something that one of your parents would say and it came out of your mouth,
Right.
or when you had a kid and you were saying to them, "You bet not because I said so," and you were like, "Oh
Right.
man, that's what I experienced growing up," it will come
Right.
out of us even if we don't recognize it. It is going to show up. It is going to be in the
Mm.
room. It is going to be present. It is going to re-traumatize. It is going to injure. It is going to provoke anxiety. It is going to do. So unless you do the work on that, you're going to hand it
Mm.
off to all the other people that you come into contact with.
Right.
You're going to
Right.
unload it somehow, even if it's in a very
Right.
toxic way. And so the trauma that we
Right.
are aware of, what do we do with that? Do we understand why we seek out the dating partners that we seek? Why every
Mm.
single, I have a young lady that I work with, every single guy she dates ends up being the same kind of guy. And at a certain point
Mm.
in time, you're the common denominator. There's something
Right.
about you that attracts toxic people. So you see the Facebook
Mm.
post, get rid of all the toxic people in your life and everything else. That's great, but you keep attracting them. So you can jettison all the toxic
Right.
people in your life, or you can start to figure out what is it about you that's attracting all these toxic
Mm.
people. You're not good.
Wow.
You're not okay. You're not the one
Right.
person in your whole toxic group of friends that's not toxic. You
Right.
have
Wow.
issues that you need to work on so that you can attract healthy people. So the saying is
Right.
opposites attract. No, the reality is we're attracted based on our similar pathologies. My issues like
Mm.
your issues. The abuser finds the woman who's had a history of being abused, right? The guy that won't
Mm.
step up and say anything finds the woman that's constantly yelling at him because of his impotence as a man to be able to step up, express himself, and take the lead. My issues like
Wow.
your issues. And you can start looking back through your parents and those impacts and effects, and you'll see what a lot of issues look like. And so it's okay, I don't know I have an issue. How can I sit and try and better understand my issues? And then once I've understood that I actually have issues, what am I going to do about it? And that phase of
Right.
what am I going to do about it? A lot of people get trapped into little quick pieces of pop psychology or little feel good moments, or I'm just gonna, chant or meditate or whatever and take these forms of expression, or I'm gonna find the next health phase that I'm gonna get into, or I'm gonna start this business to make sure I'm giving back to my community and do something. Some of that can be good. Some of that can just be
Right.
avoiding the real work of, have you talked through the fact that you grew up with a toxic mother that was
Right.
constantly critical of you, that was constantly
Mm.
judging you. And so your pride, your fight for success is really not just a fight for success in a healthy sense. You're still trying to prove to that toxic parent that I'm good enough, that I'm valuable enough,
Right.
if they're still alive, to receive validation from them. So have you set and processed out why your goals are your goals? Why you're pushing to
Right.
achieve the things that you want? Why your relationships look the way your relationships do? Why you love your
Right.
girlfriend, but you can't be faithful to her? And you have a dad who was
Right.
never faithful to his partner, and a grandfather who was never faithful. But now you're just going to turn around and going to be faithful about it. Have you talked about it? Have you looked into it?
Right.
And the anxiety that comes
Wow.
with that, the anxiety that you're creating with your partner. Now you have two people that are traumatized with all these histories, creating this shared history that's full of anxiety, full of traumas, full of fear, full of stress, and we're not going to do anything to functionally deal with it. And then we're surprised 10 years down the road when we're getting divorced because we're just two different people that have grown apart. No, you're the very same people that have been toxic the entire time that grew together. And when you put two toxic things together, it's not going to mesh very well, right?
Right.
No one ever walks down the
Wow.
aisle and says, I plan to get divorced in about 5 or 6 years. No, we
Right.
plan to be together forever. We just don't make a plan to be together forever. We don't figure out,
Right.
okay, we have these issues. How are we going to work them together? Who's going to sit and help listen to us to help mediate this stuff? We're just going to have our debilitating anxieties that lead to a lack of productivity, some acting out behaviors, and now I'm upset with where we've got.
Right. Wow. You said some things there, my friend. Right. I think the one last thing before I get your final thoughts is that I can get anxious or have anxieties around the work that I have to do. How can I basically, without the African proverb of eating one elephant, one bite at a time, right?
Right.
But how can you not get overwhelmed with your work
Mhm.
to kind of have you show up and not be um, the less than person that we're showing up and anxious about it.
Right. I think the reality is we can have a thousand things that we would like to get done in a day, but only have time for 100 of them, right? And
Right.
so you're trying to fit 1,000 things into space for only 100. And so I think the African proverb is true, right? You can only chop off one thing at a time, but set your list, set your priorities, and understand what you can control, right? So we come back to anxiety. Understand what we can control. I understand that you would like to get all these things done and they all feel important to you, but the reality is there's so much time in the day and you're not going to get them done. So you can burn up your
Right.
productivity being anxious about trying to accomplish a task that's bigger than the day, or you can maximize your productivity by breaking it up in bite-sized chunks so you can chew through it in the most efficient way possible. And so I think
Right.
that to-do list comes in handy. What can I do? What do I have to get done? I think
Right.
in addition to creating the to-do list is of work responsibilities. Personally, what do I want to do for myself today? What do I want to do in my relationship today with my kids, with my person that I'm dating, with my spouse? What do I want to get done here? And how do I set a way to be effective as possible in that so that work doesn't compromise everything in my life? Because what we realize
Right.
sometimes is after our work week, man, I haven't had much time for myself or self care. I'm kind of stressed out, or man, I haven't been there much for my kids or for my partner or any of that stuff. And wow, I just lost a
Right.
whole week of that. Or it's caused me to be
Right.
frustrated and stressed out and lashing out at everybody else. And now everybody in my house is sitting with anxiety because they know I'm just trying to work and get it all.
Right.
Do I want to be that
Right.
guy? What do you truly value at the end of the day? What's the cost benefit analysis? Do I want to be the guy trying to get 1,000 things done in space for 100 to the cost extent of everything else being compromised? Or do I want to
Right.
efficiently get done as much as I can today and set myself up to do that tomorrow and maintain good and healthy relationships where somebody's not going to be sitting in the therapist office a couple weeks from now, a couple years from now because of me.
Right. No. That I there was a number of years with my within my marriage and with my kids that was a concern. It's like, okay, I don't want to do anything, so they end up on Oprah, you know. So I'm, or it's, or something, or something. So it's like, so now, and so now I don't want them to end up on Jerry Springer or Moby Povich or something, or
Right, right,
something.
right.
So it's like even got crazier, right?
Right.
They're not getting the help; they just telling your business, right? So,
You're dating yourself a bit. I don't know if people are really looking
I
at,
know.
looking at those platforms anymore. I don't know.
Right. So now I guess now parents are just worried if their kids are recording them, we'll put them on World Star, huh?
Right, right, right. They got
You
bad
know?
hair, they got a bad haircut. Everybody look at it on Facebook.
Right. So yeah, we could talk for hours. This has been enlightening and this has been encouraging, and I think for me, I've been able to take a breath and my anxiety level has come down. I hope that some of the people that have been listening to this kind of can feel the way forward, because it is not something um, that it's like an on and off switch.
Mhm.
There's work. There is time in, and I just appreciate your insight. Is there any one last thing? I mean, there's so many nuggets in this, but is there any one last thing that you want to leave for everyone?
Um, I think I'm a helper in the helping profession, and
Mm.
I like to stay medium, stay cool, calm, and collected, and I think that's more my personality. But with everything going on with the coronavirus and the first um, week or two of that, I'm standing in the grocery store. I'm looking at all the people masked up, look like they're going into hazmat situation. And I'm listening
Mm.
to a podcast and they're talking about sports, but they're talking about the coronavirus. And I see everybody wiping down everything. And I start to get this sweat. Then I start to
Mm.
feel like I'm running a temperature. Then I start to get this
Mm.
shortness of breath and these body aches. And I'm like, oh no, am I coming down with the
Right.
corona? Corona's going to get me,
Right.
right?
Corona.
And,
Corona got me.
and I think the reality was what happened in that moment. It was like, okay, unplug, right? Kind of ground yourself in where you are. Work to get out of the store as quickly as possible. Take a deep breath, because the reality is, right now in this moment, you are okay, right? Your
Mm.
anxiety is ratcheting up because of all the stuff that you're intaking and ingesting around you, and it's this cacophony of noises that are drowning you right now.
Mm.
Take a step back from that, get that space. And so I think that's what a lot of people need to be able to do, is take a space away from the TV, whether it's corona or the protest, whether it's politics, which was getting us long before corona showed up on the scene.
Right.
Any of these things,
Absolutely.
get away from that space, right? For me, it's my faith.
Mm.
For me, it's getting grounded and reading the Bible, taking that time to pray. Get to that space where I can take a breath and tap into
Mm.
something that's healthy for me, something that's grounding for me, so that I can go back out to the next day of whatever battles may come that day. So I'm not compounding anxiety on top of each other. And so that would be my
Right.
piece of advice for everybody. Find that space to disconnect. You don't need to watch the news cycle 24/7, regurgitating the same thing. You don't need to be on the conspiracy YouTube pages going down the rabbit hole of looking at all of that stuff. You don't need to find ways to ingest anxiety, toxicity, trauma. Get a break from
Right.
it. Take a space so that you can be your better version of yourself as you interact with it afresh the next day, and you're not still chewing off the mill of the stress from the day before.
Wow. Thank you, my friend. This has been enlightening and empowering, and all those things that you want on Motivation Monday, right?
Yeah,
But thank you very much. I don't know if you have a couple of moments. I would love for you to sit in the green room for a moment where I can
yeah,
say our
absolutely.
goodbyes.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Wow. Um, I um, I and you know how sometimes you have conversations that you didn't know you needed to have, but you're glad that you had them, even though this conversation has been scheduled for well over a month, and the word was given well over a couple weeks ago. This is the time. This is the moment that I needed to have this conversation, and I hope it was the same for you. I noticed that there was a number of comments that I didn't get to. I will respond to them after our recording, but it's sometimes when you're within a conversation, you just want to stay in it, and so you don't want to miss anything to divide our time. I promise you, I will get better at looking and including your comments within our conversation. But I definitely am honored that you're here. Um, Continue to share your thoughts about anxiety, or how this word lands for you. I would love to respond to that in the comments. But as Philip let us know, um, the take a moment to disconnect. You know, disconnect to connect. That's what I heard. Hope you heard that too. Connect to yourself. Connect to your source. Connect to the things that are very important to you. And sometimes our anxiety is an indication, and sometimes um, it is not helping us at all. So the world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow